I'm ready to slash and burn.
No quarter. I am going to be uncomfortable and all over you from start to finish.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And I'm excited because it's one of the few times that I get to rep the merchandise of somebody that I'm interviewing. But today I decided, this season I'm doing a little bit of a different take on some of the previous interviews that I've done. Obviously, I've talked to David Small of Banshee, but I thought what would be more fun than talking to the Banshee herself, Genny. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. So tell me, what has it been like being the Banshee this season?
Crazy. It was a lot of fun. So while I'm an engineer, I love costumes and everything, as you can see. And funnily enough, it actually came about because I had told David, if we make it on, I'll dress up as a Banshee. And it started as a joke and went too far. But it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with the character, and kids loved it. And again, I just love costumes. So it was a lot of fun to take our robot, look at it, and say, okay, how can I make this in human form? And just run around and create something pretty unique for the show.
I think it's a lot of fun. I'm a big fan of costumes and dressing up. Obviously, anybody who has watched this show for any length of time knows this about me. So maybe I need to watch any promises that I make builders of what I would be willing to dress up as, just in case. Because I would.
They hold you to them. They hold you to them.
Exactly. Now I'm curious, before we get into kind of talking about the season, tell me a little bit about you. What got you into robotics in the first place and getting involved with the team Banshee?
So I started off in high school. I did first robotics, team 4296. Unfortunately, got to 10 years and then funding ran out because robotics is expensive. I started off in high school. I was really involved with the mechanical side of things. And I got to college, and my brother and I went to the same school, and he did a similar competition. And it was more strategy based. And I actually remember going to this competition and being bored. But I had heard that there was a combat robotics competition going on. So I went over to that. And that's literally how it happened. Is I saw RoboBrawl at University of Illinois, and I was involved with it throughout my 4 years in college. I competed 30-pound robots. Fortunately, my senior year was 2020, and I was the head of the organization that ran it, and our competition was canceled a week before. So there's a 30-pound combat robot just sitting in my parents' garage. I made sure to take the lipos out, and I know it's there. So I competed at RoboGames in 2017, my first and last RoboGames. I know it is coming back this year. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get registered in time, but that's actually where I met David. We were staying at the same hotel, and we were hanging out with some builders in the bar area one night, and we just got to talking. It was him, David Rush, and a couple other builders that were there. And honestly, it's kind of weird seeing everyone in person this season that I haven't seen since 2017 in person, because very little has changed, minus some of the builders having kids, which is a little bit weird. I got talking to David Small, and we just stayed in touch since then, and we'd send each other robot things or cute guinea pig photos and stuff like that. And we've maintained a pretty good friendship. And then once he submitted Banshee for the show, he's like, hey, you know robot things, you're an engineer, want to help build a robot? I'm like, okay, sure, how can I help? But that's really how it kind of got rolling, was back in 2017 by pure chance, and just staying involved and talking to people in the community.
Yeah, you never know.
No.
This community is kind of great like that, that, you just kind of get involved with something or get talking to someone, and you never know where that's going to go. I certainly didn't think that, 8 months ago or whatever that this would be a thing right now, but here we are. So
Me neither. Oh, it's been amazing, and yeah, just me doing something for fun in college, and now running around with glowing green ribs on a TV show with the flippers. It's a weird chain of events to get there, but
it certainly has been, but it's exciting, and I think like it's cool because there aren't a lot of flippers. Most of the field is spinners or drums of some kind. That's pretty much the going weapon these days. So it's interesting to see a flipper, but also difficult because you're directly compared to the other flippers, which are like some of the best flippers that there's ever been.
yeah. Yeah, I actually, from the earlier seasons of BattleBots, Bronco was one of my favorite robots. And we actually we got a shout out from Team Bronco at one point of like, hey, we're giving you guys our blessing, good luck. And I think I died a little inside because I was freaking out. And it is funny to me going from, I've never worked with a flipper before. I've looked at spring powered ones and said, no, it's easier to spin a chunk of steel, and it's just easier to go that route. So this is actually my first flipper that I worked with in a competition. So I'm very much more well versed on the spinner side of things. But yeah, coming in, being compared to Hydra or Bronco or other flippers and being like, okay, I guess we'll try to do that.
Yeah, Bronco is involved in one of my favorite matches of all time, but that one did not go very well for Bronco.
The one where
So
all their wheels got eaten out of
that was
curiosity.
that was when Minotaur sniped every single one of their wheels.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite matches as well. And I love Bronco, but oh, wheel guards. That was actually, that match in particular is the one where I was the team captain in college for my teams, and I said, okay, guys, we're putting wheel guards on every single robot we build. I'd rather risk it getting bent in and bashing the wheel and us having to deal with that than having all of our wheels completely destroyed and us being a sitting duck.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's a lot of fun. But yeah, it's just really cool to be able to get in there as a rookie and a flipper. Now the first match that you had was against Switchback, which was really interesting because Switchback was a rookie last year, but they've really put a lot of work into that robot to make it
Yeah.
really competitive, and it did quite a bit of work on Banshee in that first match. What did you think about that one?
So when I found out we were going against Switchback at that point, I got in a little bit late on, I think, the Saturday night. Days are an enigma. I remember I got in late in the night before the builders meeting when we found out who we were fighting against. When they said Switchback, I'm thinking last year's Switchback, because I hadn't gotten a chance to go around the pits and look at the robots, and the rest of my team was like, "Uh-oh." And I'm sitting there going, "What's wrong? This is a big deal here, guys. What's going on?" And they're like, they're down a ways from us, go take a look. And I then understood why they were scared. Yeah, looking at so before the match, looking at the robot, Switchback is beautiful, and like the amount of work that they put into that robot this year, it's amazing, and the team is amazing itself. I have been talking to Greg a bit about how they did the design for their robot and changes they're going to make. So going into that match, we were scared, admittedly, trying not to show it. And then during the match, I admittedly don't remember a ton. I do distinctly remember the face getting ripped off the robot. And I think I just laughed a laugh of, oh God, which we're just happy we made it out in mostly one piece. Obviously the face was elsewhere, but we came out of it with not a ton of mortal damage done to our robot, thankfully. And it really, within that match, because we were worried that our drive started to go out, we had the fun issue of our motor controllers overheating. as a lot of robots do when they're getting ready. So our motor controllers overheated, which prevented our drive from working. In addition to, we were running on a way lower air pressure than Banshee was built for. There was some miscommunication with what we needed to properly test to. So our compromise was, okay, we'll run at a lower pressure. And our final lower pressure, we weren't allowed to run at that level for that match. So we were running at an even lower pressure. We'd also tested beforehand to show that our flipper worked, and we weren't able to refill our air tanks. So as you saw in the match, we really only got 1.5 out of the flipper. I won't even necessarily call them flips because they weren't full flips, just due to the nature of everything else going on. But in the match, we were freaking out that our robot wasn't driving correctly. Our flipper was only kind of working. Oh, there goes the face. Oh wait, there's smoke coming out of them. That was kind of our what we were thinking at most when the match was going on. And then after the match, when we were evaluating things, thankfully our robot frame didn't get ripped in half, because that was a big concern of what would happen. But we went over and we took a look at Switchback's robot. We actually cracked their weapon in half, clear through. We don't know if it was just going face to face with them, or if there might have been some issue with the metal or like heat treating levels. But we did crack through their weapon, and we did find out that the smoke coming out of their weapon was, we reflowed the solder on their motor controller back into it, which I know David has talked about on his channel, and that thing stinks. Things burnt electronics smell times 10, and that about gets it. But we were happy with the match. Glad Switchback did an amazing job, and they beat us. And coming out of it, we did learn a bit with, well, figuring out a way to not get our motor controllers to overheat, along with showing to safety, hey, we're not going to blow up if we're at this pressure. Let us go higher. Let us show that we can actually flip as a flipper, given that's kind of our entire thing.
Right, exactly. And I mean, really, I think that for rookie bots, that first match is really kind of a test, and yeah. I think most rookies don't necessarily win that first match, because you have to kind of see, okay, this is what the robot's doing, and then go back in and then make those adjustments to try and do better that second time out.
Definitely. And it was a case of taking notes, looking at, okay, this didn't work, let's change that. Oh, I think our master link might have blown in that match as well, which that didn't help our drive. But really going through and assessing what actually broke, what things worked, because there were things that did work. There were things that definitely didn't. We had forks on the front of our robot, and they had little support plates behind them that were welded AR500 that got jammed straight back into our robot. Luckily, it didn't really affect anything other than us going, huh, as we took it off. But yeah, it was definitely, we went into that match. We went and we put everything out there as any team would do. And it really was seeing, okay, what's going to work, what's not going to work. What do we need to change? Because no robot's perfect, and we were going out there without having much, if at all, any proper testing on our bot. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good though, that you took that stuff away going into that second match. And first of all, before I even get into it, I just have to say, with the entrance coming out, I love how much of a nerd David is. I love it so much.
Amazing.
The sword is epic. Yeah, I love it. So if BattleBots, there needs to be a sword robot fight. We need to attach swords to the top of a couple of robots, and we need to have a sword fight. That needs to happen.
You don't even need to flip then. We can just scout. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's the next thing that we need to do. But yeah, so it was an interesting matchup for me because you have two people, David and Lucy, who are new as captains, but not new to BattleBots, have been on other teams.
Yeah.
But then you have David coming in with a net new robot to BattleBots and Lucy taking over a robot that's been around for some time. So there's certainly different nuances on both sides of the coin. And, I think that Valkyrie ended up getting flipped in that match and really had difficulty doing much after that. And, certainly David was able to capitalize on that.
Yeah. Now, David is, I will say, on top of everything, he's an excellent driver. I've seen his smaller bots drive, and I never want to drive against him. He's an excellent driver, and in our first match, obviously things didn't go as great with driving, but you can still see things there where he did a good job getting away and preventing major damage. And I definitely, with the box rush right at Valkyrie at the beginning, that's something that we had talked about, is we can't let them spin up. We just can't. Because if they spin up, yes, we've got, as it's lovingly put, the giant green thing on the front of the robot. Even though we have that, we don't know if we can take their hits, and we don't want to get completely wrecked in one hit. So it was really, we just have to get in their face and not let them spin up. And that is something that's just a tried and true method. The box rush, it works against horizontals. When I've competed horizontals, it worked against me. So that was a little bit of just an experience thing we had from other competitions going in. And Lucy knew we were going to do that. I mean, it's pretty clear from the fork. that they knew we were going to do that, but it was, even though, like as you said, two new team captains, both going in there with experience that they had from their other teams or their smaller bots, and you can see that with certain modifications that were made on our end and on their end to try to counter each other.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to say anything, I would say that it's probably like, yes, Lucy's a great bot builder. Lucy's been on other teams, like very experienced, but not so much as a driver. That's something that's a little bit new to her. And I think, she was kind of trying to find her footing. And we'll see how that goes the rest of the season. But to me, that kind of is what I saw as the difference.
I think that's fair. And it's also trying to find your footing with a 250 pound giant chunk of metal with a spinning wheel on it in front of a crowd that's cheering and jeering you. I mean, I can't even imagine, because like the competitions I've driven in, I haven't driven in a few years, but even then it's a lot smaller stakes, and I was still freaking out beforehand. So for what she had to work with, I think she did a good job. But yeah, figuring out how to get a robot driving effectively, and driving is so important for combat robotics in front of just, under those circumstances, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, like the pressure in the arena is real. And I wasn't even driving a robot. You can just feel it. Like it's a lot.
Oh yeah, and something funny side thing that we actually didn't realize before we went out is we didn't know that they put the red side and the blue side of the arena. We didn't know that they tell them to cheer for their team or the other team. And at one point, I remember we walked out. We're like, "Why are we getting booed? No one knows us." I don't remember. I admittedly no clue what fight that was before, but I do remember walking out and because they amp people up to cheer and everything, and it's just, again, I can't even imagine. So I was freaking out enough, and my main job was to look spooky at that point, or to pull for the Valkyrie fight. I did pull the cart as they got the robot off the cart, but and I was freaking out just doing that. I can't even imagine driving.
Yeah,
those circumstances.
Exactly. I think she did a great job because like Lucy is one of my favorite people in BattleBots, so I'm really rooting hard for for her to do well with Valkyrie the rest of the season. But yeah, it was
a beautiful robot.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, now we can't talk about the last two matches, but I'm just curious to get your thoughts on, like, when you saw, okay, we have Emulsifier and Blip on the schedule, what were you thinking? Because Emulsifier, again, also a rookie bot, but like it's freaking scary. And then
Terrifying.
Blip being the newest, like really good, like Aaron Hill flat out knows how to make robots. Like,
Yes.
so like that's, that's also kind of daunting to take your flipper up against that flipper.
Yes. So when we thought we were going against a multiplier, 'cause I had seen the smaller scale version of a multiplier, and I think I almost threw up when I found out when we were going against them. I mean, we could have gone against worse opponents. But I remember going into that fight, that was the fight I was most worried about going into, with the thought of, is our robot going to come out? Just full stop, is our robot going to come out after this? But yeah, when we found out about that one, we started kind of peeking over at their pits, seeing, okay, what can we grab onto to flip? Can we grab their treads? What are we gonna do with this? We were nervous going into that one, and yeah, I can't say a ton about it, but I personally, that was the fight I was most worried before, going into. And then the Blip fight, I just thought, oh, this will be fun. Someone's gonna get flipped. Someone's gonna get flipped a lot. I don't know who's gonna do what, but it's gonna be a fun time. And talking to Eric, we actually, I was most interested in Blip's flipping mechanism with the clutch and everything. And he was actually, before our match, going over there and talking to him, he was minus showing him what they were actually running on their robot at that point, because they quite literally have a tent over their pit, so you can't see. I don't fault them. But he was really open with us of, yeah, here's how our robot runs. This is how we do our flipping mechanism. By the way, we gyro this way. It takes this long for us to spin up. So if we pin you for this long, you're about to get flipped. It was kind of weird how open he was. But I found it really interesting. And that one, I wasn't necessarily worried going into. I just thought it was going to be funny regardless of what happened. I also had the thought of, well, he doesn't have a spinner on him, so maybe this will be interesting. I'm still down for a flipper rumble though. With everyone to the moon. I think that would be fun. We got halfway there, so get a couple other bots.
Let's do it. Just get all the flippers in the box and just see what happens.
I mean, someone might end up in the ceiling. It's fine.
Well, I know that Jake Ewert really wants to put someone into the ceiling, so I'm sure that he would love to have that opportunity.
He was pushing for it. He was pushing for a flipper rumble. It just didn't work out. But yeah, I have a feeling, just based on size, out of all the flippers, Blip has the best chance of going into the ceiling, just purely based on size of the robot. And we drive away and hide in a corner, I guess. I don't know. And based on power of flips, I would say I think Hydra has the highest chance of getting someone else into the ceiling.
I mean, history would dictate that that's likely.
Yes.
just based off of past things that we've seen. Yeah. So
just take out all the lights. Fine.
Yeah. BattleBots doesn't need those lights.
Yeah, it's fine.
I still it amazes me that every episode, that poor BattleBot sign in the arena, it gets taken out every single episode.
It's funny because you can hear both in the pits and the crowd like, ah, when the sign comes down. I was confused at first why it was so easy to knock out, and then I realized it wasn't. You'd break it. So it's just easier to knock it out. But I mean, it gives more visibility to the drivers, in all fairness, when the sign's not there, because it's clear behind it. So you knock it out and you can look below and see. Poor sign.
I guess. And I mean, I feel like at this point it's almost going to be like the running gag of the season. Like, who's gonna knock it out this time? Because it just always happens.
This is Vegas. Put some bets on it. It's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll see how that all goes down. Another thing that I'm curious about, for you as somebody who's like new to going to BattleBots, were there any like teams or robots that you were really excited to see in person?
There were several. So I've been a big fan of the show, if that's not clear. But yeah, so actually when we got there, so before we could go into the pits, we had to take the COVID test and everything. And I remember I was standing outside just kind of waiting, and Ricky from Mammoth goes by yelling against bearings or bushings or something, and I had a moment of and then but then I realized, like, oh, he's just someone else that likes to break people's toys too. And so there were quite a few robots. For me, meeting Andrea Galeli from Witch Doctor, she's a huge reason that I went into engineering. And funny thing, when I met her was the first time I was in the Banshee costume, and I had no confidence and didn't know I was going to be meeting her. And her team's like, "Oh yeah, you should meet her." And I tried talking to her, and there were no words that came out of my mouth. I just kind of but she was super nice, and I think kind of understood what was going on of me freaking out. But yeah, there were quite a few teams. Seeing Huge in person was awesome. And just talking to all of the teams, I'm trying to think, there's so many that I was kind of freaking out and not. I was a bit afraid to go up to talk to certain teams, and David was like, "Hey, like, you're a builder too, just go talk to them." But yeah, Huge, Mammoth, Witch Doctor, those were some of the biggest ones that I wanted to see in person. And again, just kind of freaking out. Actually, we got put in the pit next to Minotaur, and I remember walking in because the Robotics guide was big help to me when I started out in combat robotics. And I walked in, I'm like, "Oh God, okay, oh boy." This is real. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh no. Yeah, just so many of the teams that have been there for seasons and seasons, too many to name. Just geeking out over their robots and seeing how they were built on the inside. That was so cool.
Trust me, I understand. Because the first day that I was there, when I got to go, over to the pits, the gentleman from the, production team or whatever was walking us over. And as we were walking towards the door, Daniel was bringing Minotaur out of the building. And I'm just like I couldn't even speak for a second.
Oh
and I didn't get to talk to Daniel, but I mean, that's probably a good thing, because I think I'm okay now. But like then I don't even know. I wouldn't have said, what I would have said would have come out in like words that didn't make sense. So
I understand that. Witch Doctor,
yeah. So, yeah, because it's funny, a big reason why when I started doing these interviews, I started with Zach and Diana from Scorpios, is because they are just like some of the nicest, down to earth people. And I was like, this is a good starter interview, because I feel like I can talk to them and not freak out. But there's a lot of people that if I had started with that, I probably would have freaked out a little bit.
So it's kind of funny. I remember I met Zach fleetingly at Robo Games, and then seeing him in person and in the context of everything, I'm like, even though they're, as you said, they're some of the nicest and most down to earth people. And I just remember, again, when I first had the Banshee makeup on, Diana came up and was like, "You look amazing." I'm like, "Thank you," but
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's funny. One of my favorite things from the whole thing when I was in the pits is because, I've been doing this and I've been talking to builders, so I'm a little bit more relaxed with it now. But, like my boyfriend doesn't do any of that. He's just, kind of peripherally, like, obviously knows what I'm doing, but he came with me to BattleBots. And so I'm a little bit more calm, and he's a little bit more like freaking out because, all these people that he sees on TV. And he's standing outside of the pits, like just having a cigarette. And JMO comes walking out, and my boyfriend was wearing a Saw Blaze shirt. And JMO's just like, "Hey man, nice shirt." And my boyfriend was like,
yeah, it was really weird, like just having casual interactions like that, where it's like, oh, yeah, we're both filling our water bottles, and you're get your tubes and go. Okay, hello. There were a lot
yes.
of interactions after. By the time it got about halfway through the filming, I finally was like, okay, they are just people. But then I would get flashes of, oh god, oh god, oh god. But team saw us doing stupid enough things to get wheels off in our pit that I'm like, I can't embarrass myself any more than I already have. So
Yeah.
I might as well go say hi.
Yes, it is like, it is true though. Like, having been a part of this community, like everyone is so real and, for the most part, very down to earth. Everyone's really easy to talk to. And like, it's just clear everyone in the community loves combat robotics and is just happy to talk about combat robotics. And I'm excited about that, because that's what I love to do. So even though I may not know the first thing about building a robot, I still love to hear about people doing it.
So cool. Oh, and it's true. You literally would go up to anyone and be like, hey, how does your drive work? I don't understand. And then, 3 hours later, you're like, oh shoot, I got to go do something, but I want to continue this conversation.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that like just in general, being there for the experience, that you learned a lot, like not
Oh my
just
gosh,
about
yeah.
your own robot, but just in general learned a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely. And just talking to the different teams and seeing how they approach different things, like literally drive systems or something like that, or even how to approach finding people for sponsors so that we can continue building these robots that do cool things. It was a lot of learning and a lot of figuring out, okay, that doesn't work. Your team tried this. Let's try this. Our team did this and it worked. Let's do that. So a lot of people coming together and like, learning together and figuring out things together, which it's an atmosphere you don't get many places. I've felt it at other competitions because I mean there's the general feeling and atmosphere of I don't want to fight a robot that's only operating at 20%. I want to see what my robot can do and if it works. And everyone is super supportive of, okay, I think it was before our Switchback fight, Switchback said, hey, if you need us to take our batteries out and put them back in to get your robot up to completely 100%, we'll do it. Which thankfully we didn't need to, but just everyone is there to see what their robots can do and have fun, again, breaking each other's toys.
Very, very expensive toys.
Extremely expensive toys.
Exactly. But it's a lot of fun. And I had to ask too, like the other, not just the, probably surreal aspect of like, interacting with all of these builders, but the production side of BattleBots, shooting promos, coming like having Farouk introduce the robot and then coming out and like, was that like, did it take a minute to get used to that?
Yes. It's kind of funny. I still don't know what he said before our first walkout. But yeah, it was something that it kind of drinking from the fire hose for figuring out how to do certain things, like the walkouts. Go do it. We're like, what? Okay, I guess we're going now. It was overwhelming. It was really overwhelming at first for me, and I've been to a fair amount of competitions, and I'm okay working on a robot under pressure. It's weird when there's a camera right here as you're trying to like take a wheel off or something or replace bushing and things like that. It was weird, and just from the aspect of, oh, there are people watching. This is strange. But it was overwhelming, and getting used to just again having cameras everywhere and figuring out, okay, I can't work on this thing right now because you're interviewing Jackpot and I don't want to be grinding something, or not grinding, but like doing something really loud in the pit right next to where you're recording. Okay, I'll do it now. I have to turn off the air compressors. It's a whole other thing. It's very strange.
Yes, I would imagine so. And again, like I wasn't even there building, but there were, often just cameras going around for various things when I was hanging out in the pits, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like,
Yeah, it was fun when it was something where, okay, David did his interview. Now we're gonna do be real as you, working on the robot. We're like, well, we just put it back together. I guess we'll take the wheels off. um, but it's very strange.
yeah, that would be the part that it would be difficult for me to get used to personally. But
Yeah.
it's so cool. Like it's such a cool thing to be able to go and do that. And it's, like I know people are always like, I wish that they had BattleBots all year, which kind of is happening right now because they're doing the Destructathon. It's not quite the same thing, but I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I think that if it was like the taping, like the filming part of things all the time, it just wouldn't be as like exciting to be there during those 2 weeks, because it's just this
Yeah.
thing that happens once a year, and it's really exciting to be a part of it.
Oh yeah, and that's not to mention how exhausting it is.
That too,
On
that
top of
too.
everything, that was the face of, oh God. But yeah, I think if they had something like that all year, specifically with BattleBots, because obviously there are other competitions, like you can watch Norwalk and you can watch other competitions that are being streamed. Funnily enough, I think those are just faster paced, and I felt more pressure at those than I did at BattleBots, given just how the structure of it is with when your matches are. Okay, we know we're not fighting tomorrow or fighting the next day. We can take time to do this versus other competitions of you've got 5 or 6 fights in a day. I find it interesting from that side when I say exhaustion, because regular competitions are exhausting. But yeah, I think it would, from the builder side, I feel like it would kind of lose some of the magic of you're there for this really like 2 week intense thing that's happening, and then you go back to real life. And if that was all year long, well, it would be fun. It would lose something special, I think.
It's almost like going to Disney World. Like if you went to Disney
Yeah.
World every day, it would be like, okay, it's just, yeah, it's a little bit, it's, you have to have that magic. And I think that that's a really cool part of it.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it makes it something special.
Yes, exactly. It is very special. It is a fun 2 weeks. I'm excited for, like, who knows? We may know in 2 months when they're filming this year. We may know in like 4 months. I don't, it's
You
tough to
don't know.
say. It's really tough to say. But
Oh yeah.
I'm excited about that. I'm excited for the rest of the season because even though it feels like there's been so many episodes, there's so much more left. So
Oh my gosh, yeah.
there's a lot still to happen.
Well, I was trying to think, I'm like, okay, when in the days that I was there, when was this happening? So I can just kind of get a reference in my brain. I think I know when it was, but I'm not quite sure. But yeah, there's so much, like, even though there, like, as you said, there have been a ton of episodes, there's so much more.
Yes, yeah, and point of reference for people who don't know. I think most people who watch the show do know, but these fights are not in order, not exactly. So just keeping that in mind, there's a
Yeah,
little bit of shuffling around.
this year it was better from my understanding than past years, but even within that, there is still a bit of shuffling within the episodes. So
Yes, because you have to have certain fights for main events and like all of that stuff. So yeah, you know not necessarily like above all, but like a big part of it is a season of BattleBots is a story. Like it
yeah,
tells a story of the teams and the robots, and so it's really important to kind of lay that out in a very specific way.
yeah, and I definitely think this year they did a good job with that, with like telling us, okay, you're going to be fighting these teams. And I mean, from the builder side, it was nice to know. Obviously, you're not thinking about fight number 4 and fight number 1, but it's nice to know, okay, I'm not gonna, I know I need to keep this fight in mind later. Maybe I shouldn't use this part now because it's more useful then, kind of situation. So from a builder's perspective, the storytelling actually helps us a lot. But also, admittedly, now from a social media perspective, it helps a lot. And figuring out, obviously I'm not going to post spoilers and things like that, but figuring out like what we can and can't say. Because in past years, I know that they couldn't say, oh yeah, I'm going to be fighting Huge, for example, but now we can openly talk about what our mindset is going into those fights and not have to keep it under wraps.
Yes, I'm sure that that helps greatly, you know, especially even when it comes to family and friends, because like they want to know when to watch to see your robot, and it's hard when you're like, I can't tell you when it's happening. So yeah, it does make it a lot nicer, and it gives fans something to look forward to, you know, when they see their favorite robot or like this really good matchup that they're looking forward to. So you know, that I think that is making this season really exciting.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's fun being able to actually plan when, okay, guys, we're gonna have a watch party this night.
Yes.
I know we're fighting this night. You're coming over.
Exactly. Yeah. So well, I'm looking forward to seeing those last two matches and seeing how those go. But I'm excited to have had you on to talk about this, because I just, you know, I like to get so many different perspectives, and you know, I think that, you know, you have a really great perspective, especially like having the background that you do, and then kind of coming into BattleBots new this year. You know, that it's exciting. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, so much more to come in the season, and just really, really exciting stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, absolutely. So for everyone that's watching, please make sure that you continue to like the videos, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, comment, let me know your thoughts, let me know what you want to see, and I will try and fulfill as many requests as I possibly can.